Dr. Mashelkar, thank you so much for doing the interview today. So, to begin with, sir, what do you think has been one of the most positive stories that has emerged amongst crisis?
Well, I would not say just one. I have five in mind. Very briefly, I will explain to them. There are a number of lessons that humanity has learned.
Mhm.
I think the first is if there is unity of purpose, then you have a solidarity. You can see the whole world is battling it together by, the analogy is just like magnetic needles, for example. They are spread here and there, but then you bring a magnet and they got all aligned. The whole world has been aligned because of this big purpose of saving the bird, first the lives and then, of course, the livelihoods. The second, I think it has given us a time to pause, time to reflect, uh, be with our family, have quality time. Uh, I think that it has made a big difference for many of us. I mean, including myself. We have been always on the run. For the first time, I have got a kind of time with my family, which I never had. The third one, I think we talk about social distancing, which requires a discipline, but that's physical distancing. I think we have got closer together thanks to the digital medium through social media, so as to say, and people are, uh, 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 you know, networking of their minds, their hearts has happened through this great medium, despite the so-called social distance. The fourth one, according to me, is the pace of change. Uh, Things would have happened 10 years later are beginning to happen now. Like, for example, digital learning. We say, yeah, it is coming, work from home and the rest of it. But suddenly we have seen the power of doing that. And we say, yes, we can indeed. So there is a big acceleration. So that's the fourth. And the fifth one, most important, suddenly we find the air that was dirty has become clean. The rivers, those were dirty, they have become clean. Like Yamuna is a sort of a clean river today. And therefore, there is a realization, a magical realization, that we should not just be talking about recovery. Recovery is going back to the past. We don't want to go back to the dirty rivers and dirty water. We have to reinvent ourselves so that what we see sort of remains. So I would say these are the five big plus positives out of this very unfortunate pandemic.
Great. So the second thing is, you've been working very closely with different companies. GeoGenX itself is working so closely with startups. You've got first-hand experience with all these entrepreneurs. So what's that one key piece of advice you would like to share with all these startups, with all these entrepreneurs?
Yes, I would. Again, my mantras are always five mantras, Mashelkar mantras. So I will quickly give those five mantras. I think the first is, in every adversity, there is an opportunity. Now, COVID was a big adversity. It has affected economies, it has affected health, it has affected the poor the most. But at the same time, it has opened up new opportunities. For example, COVID implies social distancing. And that means, can you start looking at distancing technologies in a broader sense? For example, physical contact has to be minimized. So drone based services, for example, telemedicine, edutech is going to just accelerate now. So I think these are new opportunities that have actually come up. The second advice I like to give, so seize those opportunities. And as I said, uh, as I always say, don't just keep on knocking on doors of opportunities. Create your own doors if they don't open. So you have to create these new doors. The second is, I always believe in these three P's, the purpose, perseverance, and passion. And that is required more now. And perseverance, most critical. It is always too early to give up. I always say quitters are never winners, winners are never quitters. So I think we'll be tested, and those are second. The third is the interpretation of the word fail itself. FAIL, fail, to me, is first attempt in learning, and your last mistake is your best teacher. So I think that is what I would like to enforce. Fourth, I always like to insist. I'm just 77, and I have discovered in my life that, like instant coffee, there is no instant success. I worked in my life 24 into 7, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. So, no substitute to hard work, excepting, I would say, work hard in silence and let the success make all the noise. And the fifth one, I will say, is that particularly since you mentioned about Geo, etc., just look at one of the greatest events that has happened during the times of COVID, which is the partnership between Geo and Facebook. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. In these times when liquidity, conserving cash is critical, a company like Facebook says, I'm going to invest. And that also sends a strong message the uh, for India as a destination. But then you will say, what about the startups? Look, what's going to happen because of this partnership is that the customers that you are dealing with are going to be digitally empowered, as you can quite clearly see the way things are moving. And therefore, your own empowered customers brings you sort of more opportunities for growth. So I would say these are the five things that I would like to really highlight in terms of my own advice to our young startups.
That's great. Very, very enriching. So one last question. Like you just said, these are, testing times is always, brings out the best out of anybody. So what gives you hope and optimism during this time, and what future do you see?
Yeah. I have the reputation of being a dangerous optimist. Lots of people call me dangerous optimist. I have always been like that, but I'm optimistic because of two reasons. One is a big one that I see at a global level, and second is at local level that I see in India. At a global level, what I have seen is I always said, that there's no limit to human achievement, no limit to human imagination, excepting the limit that you put on yourself. And we have seen that. You're seeing, for example, there is a challenge on vaccine, new drugs, and so on. And look at the way the fastest development of a vaccine and fastest run to do clinical trials has already actually taken place. The second is, for the first time, when we talk about World War II, there were certain countries that were affected, basically, not the whole world. In this case, whole world, 200 plus countries. So for the first time, we are all fighting with a common enemy. So there has to be a cooperation. But at the same time, there is a competition because people are realizing the issues of the fragile supply chains and so on and so forth. So this delicate balance of cooperation versus competition is something I think that will sort of take us forward. So I think we'll be more robust and more competitive and mutual growth. So that is at a global level. At a local level for India, I always say, you are my hopes. Young startups are my hopes. I'm a great believer in young people because, they say innovator is one who does not know it cannot be done. You guys are ones, oldies like me think that it can't be done, but for you, everything is possible. Making impossible possible is your KRA. So that is my biggest hope, as a matter of fact. And I have seen that. Actually, the way, I chair this Marico Innovation Foundation. They have created this 2.5 crore prize. So I'm currently the chairman. And I've seen the applications pouring in and young startups coming out with such fantastic sort of ideas. So I think India has this great uh, demographic dividend with young minds, the Yuva Shakti that I see. That gives me this hope. So at a global level and at a local level.